Welcome to More Than a Paycheck, the podcast for high achievers who feel trapped in their job but know something has to change. If your bad manager and toxic work environment have you stressed and working crazy hours, and you want an easier solution than finding a new job, you're in the right place. Let's do this. Hey y'all, if you haven't listened to the episode before this, go do that. Today is part 2 of our series of toxic workplaces. So last episode, we talked a lot about what are some of the warning signs. How do you know if you're in this type of a harsh work environment or not? Go listen to that. Today, I want to talk about how do you kind of know what is your limit of what makes something toxic? How do you set a boundary? Okay. But that's not the hard part. The hard part is how do you do that and really focus on holding those boundaries and saying no and not tolerating that kind of behavior when you're worried about the repercussions, when you're worried about what might happen. Okay. I think there's a lot of great insight and help around here's how you set a boundary. Here's what you do. And we are going to talk about that today. That's not the hard part. The hard part is actually doing it. And the hard part is letting whatever happens afterwards happen. So that's kind of what I want to dive into a little bit today. So I will also say it's a tricky thing to navigate. I think this is where a good mentor, a good coach, someone can really help you dive into your specific situation. I'm happy to help do the same. Go sign up for a coffee chat. But I also am going to give you some things to help with that today. So remember, a toxic or a harsh work environment, it's basically one where there's really low emotional intelligence and a lack of accountability. And so this terrible behavior, it's tolerated and it usually kind of grows and perpetuates because it's tolerated in leadership. So it tends to filter through multiple avenues of leadership. So what is harsh or toxic? This is something that only you can define, and you start to know it because you start to feel it. Okay. For me, really the only way I've been able to help others understand what is kind of their limit and to do this work for myself is it literally is just a feeling within me. And sometimes I can't even explain it. I just know I'm like, no, that's my limit. No, I'm not okay with that. That doesn't feel right. Usually for me, signs things are starting to get into that territory where I'm not okay is I start really like questioning things. I start to question, is it me? Is it them? Like what's happening? What's going on here? It happens when I start to feel worried to speak up, or I find myself feeling defensive all the time. And like, I don't trust people that I normally would trust. Now, this feeling is different than a feeling of being like self-conscious and doing hard things and having a little bit of a lack in myself. For me, usually I know I'm getting into this harsh, unhealthy work environment when these are things that I would normally do and I don't feel safe to do them anymore. It doesn't feel good. Something feels off, right? So I'm not talking about you're new at something or it's an experience where of course you're going to feel nervous. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's this like harsh, toxic work environment, right? We got to do hard things. We got to learn and grow. That's part of work and being human. And we love that. So let's say, for example, there's a big meeting with a lot of people in it and you're going to speak up. Of course, you're going to feel nervous to speak up like most people would. That nervous, anxious feeling doesn't necessarily mean it's a harsh environment. It could, but it could also just make total sense that like, yeah, it's nerve-wracking to speak in front of some of these people. Okay, makes sense. Now, what might make it unhealthy and toxic is when you speak up and ask a question and you're getting yelled at, or you're getting made fun of, or there's a highly emotional response from someone and it's making you feel totally shut down and like you're not listened to. Okay. That's where to me, I'm like, no, of course it's going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to feel awkward and flub my way through speaking up in this setting. But the response back is where I'm like, okay, yeah, this is not okay. Let's say, for example, you're speaking up in a big meeting with a lot of people. You're a little bit nervous and anxious, and you're asking, how do you get buy-in for this thing you're proposing from a skip level leader? Okay. Now, again, the answer you get in response, you may not like. That doesn't mean it's a harsh environment. The leader responding to this might come back and just very directly say, you don't need it, just keep going. They might come back and say, let's talk about it offline. They might come back and say, I've outlined the steps for how you could do that in your email. Please check your inbox. They might come back and say, I don't know, just go ask. Just because we don't like their answer and it maybe feels a little direct or harsh, that may be a hard and toxic work environment for you, but that may not, right? For me, what I have found is more of this unhealthy work environment is when the response, it's just chock full of emotion and drama. So instead of saying like, oh, you don't need their buy-in, just go and do it. They're like, don't ask, just effing go and do it already. Or they're like, that's a stupid question, right? They're having some sort of like an adult temper tantrum and it's coming through in how they're relaying that message. That's such a stupid question. Everyone knows you just go and ask. What do you mean? It's not that hard. You just ask, right? To me, that's the unhealthy work environment where they're trying to make you feel dumb and to put you down in some way because you asked this question. To me, the harsh work environment is more about the emotional intelligence of the response of the question, the response to me asking a question, the response to how I phrase the question. The harsh work environment is not like I get really nervous to speak up and ask a question. If they have this emotionally immature response and the behavior is tolerated and it's not okay with you, this is where I would offer to you to think about, is this someplace you want to set a boundary? Now, a boundary is what you will do if someone crosses the line. I see people get hung up on boundaries a lot because what happens is we have a lot of requests. Hey, when you reply to me, can you please not yell at me? Hey, in your response, I get that you're annoyed and frustrated, but I don't appreciate being sworn at. I'm all for those things. And I think you should have the requests. But here's the thing. We can't guarantee the other person's going to do it. So what happens is we think we're setting a boundary saying, hey, please don't swear at me. Hey, please don't yell at me. And then the person does it. And then we get angry and resentful. And then everyone's mad and a little bit pissed, or very much so. And there's very little productive conversation that stems from that place. And we start bashing how terrible this leader is and how terrible this company is. And we're not actually doing anything about it. We're just letting the lack of accountability continue, and we're adding to the negative environment. So a boundary is, hey, will you please not swear at me and yell at me when you respond? You don't even have to tell the other person what your boundary is or what you're going to do. But a request is asking. A boundary is doing something when they do. So if my leader's going to start to yell or swear at me or have this like adult temper tantrum, okay, and that's a boundary violation to me, I'm just going to hang up the call. I'm just going to get up and walk out of the room. That is within my control. I can't control the words and volume coming out of my leader's mouth, but I can control if I'm in that environment or not. Okay. If I ask a question in a meeting and they start to belittle me or tell me how stupid I am or have this, again, emotional response, okay, I can just remove myself. If my leader is demanding that I work outside of working hours without supporting some sort of a shift in my schedule or other projects, okay, I cannot show up and not do the work. Now, as I talked about at the beginning, it's going to be a little bit scary to like do the thing, to hold the boundary, to walk out, to not show up, to hang up, to leave the room. Okay. It's going to feel scary and super emotional. And it's really important that while you do this, you take care of yourself. Okay. It's not going to be fun. It's not fun to have someone yell and swear at you. And it's not fun to have to feel all the angst that comes from removing yourself from that situation. But it's hard because we're worried about the retaliation. How's this other person going to feel? How are they going to respond? Especially in a work setting. Am I going to get fired? Okay. Here's the thing I want you to keep in mind. Your brain by default, when this happens, our brains, because they're trying to help us, goes to extreme worst case scenario. If I leave this meeting, I am going to be fired. My manager is not going to promote me and they're going to hate me. Now, here's the truth. Quick interruption. If what you learn on this podcast is helpful, this is just the beginning. Your next step is to go and schedule a coffee chat, and we're going to dive into your specific situation. You'll leave knowing a few things you can try right away to get unstuck. And no, this is not a sales call. My goal is to help however I can. If I think coaching can help, I will tell you about it, but I'm currently on a wait list for new clients. Click the link in the show notes or go to lindsaylymancoaching.com/chat and get on my calendar. I only offer a few of these a week, and it's first come, first serve. All right, back to the podcast. It's possible those things might happen because it's outside of your control. But do you actually want to work in a place that this toxic behavior is accepted? No. Now, you may be in a situation where you have to work in this place until you can find something else. Okay. If that's the case, I'm going to dive way more into that in our next episode, so make sure you subscribe. But very high level, what we want to do then is we want to stop sitting in the place where we're complaining about how terrible it is. And we want to get into that place where we know this is most likely going to happen and it's going to be accepted. You want to help take care of yourself through it so that you can spend your emotional time figuring how do you get out. Not spend your emotional time trying to justify why it feels terrible and hard. Okay. So again, that's next week. Subscribe. We'll dive into that. So let's say my manager was yelling and swearing at me and I just walked out. Okay. The reality is in that very moment, I'm not getting fired at that second. I just remind my brain that. I'm like, yeah, there may be repercussions. I'll deal with that. But right now, I feel worried and scared. And my manager's probably mad and annoyed or feeling something that's not great. Listen closely to what I'm about to say. Your manager feeling bad is not a problem for you to solve. They're allowed to feel whatever they want. But if you take on that feeling and you try to take it away from them, it's bad for you and it's bad for them. It's bad for you because you're trying to manipulate and control what you can't. And it's bad for them because they're not owning their feelings and their actions and taking responsibility for them. We're just continuing this cycle of not having accountability for a low emotional intelligence. Now, some people come to me and they're like, I know, but I just feel so guilty. And I'm like, no, this is not guilt. Guilt is when you do something that's out of alignment with who you are and you feel bad about it. You yell at your kids, you feel bad. You miss a deadline, you feel bad. Guilt is not, hey, I left a room because my manager was yelling and swearing at me and now I feel guilty. No. What happens is your manager's yelling and swearing at you and you get annoyed and you walk out of the room and now you're worried and anxious. But if you're trying to take on their feelings, when someone feels bad about it, that's not guilt. That's just you trying to feel their emotions. It's okay. It's just not helpful. But it's also kind of how we're taught to manage feelings. We're taught, oh, did your friends hurt your feelings? Oh, did that make you feel bad? Here's the reality. Other people can't hurt your feelings. Your thoughts and beliefs and experiences about what they've said and what they've done, that can make you feel some things. But other people can't hurt your feelings, so you can't hurt other people's feelings. You also can't feel their feelings for them in a way that makes them feel better. It's not your job to take on their feelings and take them away. In order to hold a boundary, you have to do your part, remove yourself in some form or fashion, and then let them feel however they want to feel and don't try to control it. Of course, they're gonna be mad and annoyed if you hang up on the call. Of course, they're gonna be angry if you don't show up to work to do the project. It's okay. Let them feel it. Let them be that way. You can let them know you're all in to have the conversation when they stop yelling and swearing. You can let them know you're all in to work on that project when they're able to deprioritize other work or pay you for not working during working hours. right? Again, if a company's going to tolerate those kinds of things, good to know, not the place we want to work. This is how we hold people accountable. So we call them out on their BS and we let them be mad about it. Of course they're mad. They're not getting their way. But their way is inappropriate. It's like a toddler being mad they can't have ice cream for breakfast. Of course they're going to be mad. We're just not going to let them have their way. Learning to let them have their feelings and not take control of it, it's a skill and something you have to practice. I do this a lot with my clients. One thing you could do today is I want you to imagine, what would this scenario feel like? So think about this toxic behavior that you're not okay with. Imagine you took action to remove yourself in some form, to hold your boundary. What do you think it's going to feel like for you? Spoiler alert, it's not great. We are empathetic humans by nature, and we love this. But when you know how to choose the hard feeling because you're choosing to respect yourself enough to walk away, and you know how to take care of yourself through that, that's when you gain back control, no matter what type of harsh environment it is. Because now we're not choosing the hard of not sticking up for ourselves, and we're not trying to get someone who doesn't respect us to respect us. We are just choosing to respect ourselves first. When that's the space you're able to get yourself to, like I said, it doesn't feel great. It's not fun, but it enables you to be the emotional, intelligent one to come back to the conversation, to come back to the scenario and have a productive conversation. Because when emotion is high, intelligence is low. When you're not all freaked out and worried and anxious of what are they thinking? Are they going to fire me? Oh my gosh, I feel so bad that they feel so bad. When you're just like, yeah, that's on you. I would be annoyed if someone hung up on me too, but maybe if you don't want me to hang up, don't yell. When you are the calm, confident person in the conversation, this is where you gain back control and you'll be able to figure out a solution or to know, okay, this is tolerated. Yelling, swearing, belittling, expecting to work for free when they're not paying me. Okay, good to know. Not the kind of place I want to be. I'm telling you, this is the secret to doing it. So again, remember, a boundary is something you're going to do. Step one is kind of hard of like actually doing the thing. It's a little bit like nerve-wracking in the moment. But what's really hard is that work afterwards to let the other person think and feel and do whatever it is they're going to do. Because I promise you, when they're acting like a toddler, it will come through in their actions and what they try to do. But when you can stay calm and feel safe in your own body and respect yourself, that's when it's like everything clicks together and you're able to find a solution for you, either at that company or someplace else. I promise you there are options. I promise you there are jobs even in today's job market. Is finding a job different? Yeah. And that's okay. But it doesn't mean you're stuck and don't have options. Okay. You got this. You're amazing. Make sure you're subscribed. Next week, we're going to talk about how do you kind of take care of yourself while maybe your manager is trying to retaliate or while you're just letting them freak out and you're in that like, I'm freaking out because I don't know what's going to happen stage. So make sure you're subscribed. You got this. We'll talk soon. Hey, you didn't schedule a coffee chat yet. Remember, that's the next step. There's so much more I can help you with. You're going to leave this coffee chat knowing a few things you can try right now, depending on your specific situation. This is not a sales call. My goal is simply to help however I can. If I do think coaching can help, I can tell you about it, but I'm currently on a wait list for new clients. Click the link in the show notes or go to lindsaylymancoaching.com/chat to get on my calendar. I only offer a few coffee chats a week and it's first come, first serve, so don't wait. Chat with you soon.